Take a quick pause. Did you know that over 90% of you watching haven't hit the subscribe button yet? If you're enjoying this video, take a second to subscribe and hit the like button. It helps us bring you more gripping stories every day. Also, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments so we can see how far our stories are reaching. Your support really keeps us going. Now, let's jump back into the video. The morning started like any other. Same alarm clock, same sore knees, same silence in the kitchen. Janet had already left for her shift at the clinic, her half-empty coffee mug still steaming on the counter, like it had something more to say. I poured mine black and bitter and stood at the window for a beat too long, watching the neighborhood stir. You get used to routine in my line of work. Routine is safety. Routine is how you survive. I've been working maintenance for the county's fleet garage for going on 19 years. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. Keeps the lights on. Most days it's fixing busted brake lines or chasing strange noises no one else can place. I like the predictability, or at least I used to. That Thursday I was underneath bus 48. Old diesel model suspension, always whining when I spotted it. A hair tie. Not unusual, you'd think, with drivers and kids hopping in and out all day. But this one stopped me cold. It was green, bright, almost lime-colored, a tiny silver heart charm dangling from it. I'd seen it before. I'd bought it before for Janet. It took me a second to move. My socket wrench slipped in my hand, clattering to the concrete with a metallic echo that seemed louder than it should have been. My heart didn't race exactly. It thooted slow and deep like it was trying to bury something. Back in the break room, I stared at the thing in my palm. It was definitely hers. I remembered the day she wore it to her niece's birthday party. She'd laughed when I pointed out it looked like something a teenager would wear, and she'd shot back that it was fun, and fun was in short supply lately. We hadn't laughed much since. I tried to shake it off, told myself I was being paranoid. Plenty of women wear hair ties like that, right? Could have been coincidence, but it sat in my pocket the rest of the day like a hot coal, burning a hole through every thought I had. That night, she came home late. Said the clinic was slammed with walk-ins. Her scrubs were fresh, though, not a wrinkle or stain. I noticed that, and when she kissed me, she smelled like a perfume I didn't recognize. Light and floral, not the lavender one she usually wore. "You okay?" she asked, noticing something in my face. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Just tired." We ate dinner in silence. I watched her more than I ate. Every move, every pause, every blink felt like a clue I couldn't quite decode. Over the next few days, the green hair tie stayed hidden in the glove box of my truck. I checked it every morning like it might change form or disappear, like maybe I dreamed it. But it was always there, waiting. Then other things started to stack up. Subtle, but there. Her phone buzzing at odd hours, always face down. A new password on her laptop, longer showers, the sudden interest in jogging, even though she hated the outdoors. I didn't want to be the kind of man who snooped, who assumed. But the quiet between us had started to hum, an undercurrent of something unsaid, something sharp. One evening, I tested the waters. "You ever work on bus 48?" I asked casually as we washed dishes together. She looked up, hands still in soapy water. "What? Bus 48?" One of the older models had a green hair tie under the seat. There was a beat, a flicker in her expression, small, almost imperceptible. But it was there. "No," she said too quickly. "Why would I?" "Don't know. Just thought maybe one of the nurses used it for transport." She shook her head. "We don't use buses. We've got our own shuttle van." I nodded, rinsing the plate in my hands for longer than necessary. I didn't say anything else, and neither did she. The next day, I started keeping a journal. Notes, times, places. I'm not a spy. Never wanted to be one. But the gaps in her story started to wear at me. I wasn't looking for proof. I was looking for something to explain why everything felt wrong. A week later, I got it. We'd run low on gas at the shop, and I had to borrow the shuttle from the parks department to get supplies. I'd barely pulled out of the lot when I saw her. Janet standing in front of a coffee shop I didn't recognize in a part of town we never go to. She was laughing with a man. He was tall, fit, younger than me by a decade, maybe more. Had that polished look, gelled hair, clean shirt, confident lean. They didn't touch, but they didn't need to. Her body leaned toward him in a way that wasn't casual, that wasn't innocent. I knew that lean. I'd lived in that lean years ago. I pulled over, ducking behind a parked SUV. My hands shook on the wheel, the skin on my face hot and tight. I watched them talk for a minute more before he reached out and tucked something behind her ear. Casual, like it meant nothing, but it meant everything. I drove away. I didn't confront her, not yet. I didn't know what I was feeling. Rage, sure, but also guilt, confusion. Was I not enough? Had I missed something along the way, or was this all in my head? That night, she came home, humming. Humming like the world hadn't shifted under my feet. "How was your day?" she asked. "Fine," I said. "And just the usual." She nodded and went about making tea. I stood in the doorway, watching her in the dim kitchen light, wondering who she was when I wasn't looking. A week passed, then two. I didn't mention what I saw. I needed to be sure. Needed more than a glimpse and a hair tie. I needed something undeniable. And then I got it again at work. We had a vehicle in from the sheriff's department. I was changing out the filters when I found something wedged in the seat rail. A receipt dated 4 days ago, 2 lattes, 1 blueberry scone, and scribbled on the top in handwriting I knew too well. A small heart beside the name J. It wasn't proof in a courtroom, but it was enough for me. I didn't go home that night. I sat in my truck outside the diner where we used to have breakfast every Sunday, back when we still laughed. I watched the neon lights flicker and thought about the years we'd built, the mortgage, the birthdays, the quiet loyalty that had become habit. Maybe she had reasons. Maybe it was more complicated than I could see. But the truth was clawing its way to the surface, and I couldn't unsee it. I had to know. I had to ask. Not with anger, not with blame, just with truth. But what I didn't expect was what she told me when I finally did. She was folding laundry in the living room when I walked in. The news murmured softly from the TV, the kind of background noise we'd grown used to, just enough to fill the silence, not enough to pay attention to. A pile of towels sat between us, and her hands moved methodically, almost robotically, as if she didn't have to think about the motions anymore. Maybe she didn't. I stood there for a while, keys still in my hand, watching her fold that last white bath towel. Her fingers brushed it smooth before she stacked it on the others. That simple motion made my throat feel thick. "Janet," I said quietly. She looked up with that same tired half smile she'd been giving me for months. "Hey, you're home early. Can we talk?" The smile faded. Not all at once, just the corners, like something pulling her mouth down from inside. She set the towel down, smoothing her palms over her jeans, and nodded. "Yeah," she said. "Sure." I sat down across from her on the edge of the couch. My knees cracked like they always did. Hers didn't. She crossed one leg over the other and waited polite like I was about to ask her about bills or groceries. But the air had changed. We both felt it. "I saw you," I began, not looking directly at her. "Outside that coffee shop near 3rd about 2 weeks ago. You were with a man." She blinked just once. No gasp, no denial. Her shoulders rose slightly with her breath and her gaze dropped to the floor. "I didn't follow you," I added. "I was in the park shuttle. Ran into you by accident. I wasn't spying. Still nothing. Just silence. And I found your hair tie under the seat of bus 48 at the garage. One with the silver heart charm." Her mouth parted slightly like she wanted to speak, but hadn't quite found the words yet. "Please," I said softer. "I need to know. I'm not here to yell. I'm just tired of not knowing." Janet looked up then, and what I saw in her eyes wasn't guilt. It wasn't even fear. It was exhaustion. And that cut deeper than anything else. "You remember 3 years ago when my mom got sick?" she asked, her voice low. I nodded. I started staying later at work to avoid coming home. I couldn't stand being in this house some nights. Every wall felt like a reminder that life was slipping past us, and we weren't doing anything with it. You were always working, I was always worrying, and we just stopped talking. I nodded again, this time more slowly. That part at least I could admit. I didn't cheat, she said. And for a second, I didn't know if I believed her. Not in the way you think. I didn't respond, just sat there waiting. His name is Lucas. He volunteers at the clinic. He's going through a divorce. We started talking during shifts. Just small stuff at first. Books, music, dumb stories. But he listened, and he made me feel like I existed again. Not like a nurse, not like someone's wife, just me. I wanted to interrupt. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I kept still, my hands balled into fists in my lap. Not out of anger, but because I was afraid they'd shake if I didn't hold them tight. We had coffee a few times. He never came to the house. We never kissed. We never anything. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, but I wanted to. That's the part that eats me alive. That was worse than if she had the thought that she wanted to, that she felt something she didn't feel with me anymore, that shattered something I hadn't even realized I was still clinging to. I stared at the carpet for what felt like forever. There were little lint balls near the edge of the coffee table. I remember focusing on them like they were the only solid things in the room. I should have told you, she said. I didn't want to lie, but I didn't know how to explain something that didn't happen, yet still felt so wrong. I finally looked up. Her eyes were wet now. Not sobbing, just that quiet kind of crying that comes from deep inside where things have been buried too long. I didn't want to throw away 20 years for a few cups of coffee and a little attention, she whispered. But I was afraid that if I told you, it would be the end anyway. The worst part, I understood. I understood every damn word. We hadn't been us in a long time. Somewhere between overtime shifts, hospital bills, and growing older without growing closer, we'd turned into cohabitants, roommates with wedding rings. Our love hadn't exploded. It had eroded slowly, quietly, like water against stone. I don't hate you, I said finally, my voice. But I don't know what to do with this. She nodded. Neither do I. We didn't touch that night. Didn't raise our voices, didn't cry together on the couch like a movie scene. She went to bed. I stayed up, watched the reflection of the kitchen light in the microwave door, and listened to the refrigerator hum. Over the next few days, things didn't change much, but they weren't the same either. We talked more, but only in surface-level ripples. Work, dinner, the dog next door barking again. But underneath, something buzzed. Then something else happened. I got called in on a weekend. One of our newer guys botched a part order, and I had to fix the mess. While checking inventory logs in the back office, I found something that didn't belong. A keychain. One of those cheap ones with a smiley face. On the back in black marker, Lucas, room 3. B. My stomach turned. The clinic shares a building with a therapy center. Rooms are labeled 3A, 3B, etc. My first instinct was confusion. Why would his name be on a keychain in our inventory room? Then I realized Janet used my truck last Thursday. Said hers was acting up. I didn't ask her about it right away. I waited to see if she'd bring it up. That night, she said nothing, just complained about traffic and asked if we had any frozen pizza left. The next morning, I made a stop. Therapy center, room 3B. I stood outside for a while debating. My heart felt like it was trying to claw its way up my throat. Then I knocked. The woman who answered was maybe mid-30s. Warm eyes, polished smile. "Can I help you?" she asked. I hesitated, then held up the keychain. I think my wife dropped this. She volunteers next door. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. Subtle. "You must be Mr. Atwood." I froze. "Yeah, how she's mentioned you," she said gently. She's been sitting in on some group sessions for caretakers, spouses dealing with depression and burnout. It's a confidential space, but I thought you knew. I didn't, not even close. Lucas runs the sessions, she added. He's good at what he does. I walked out of there with a head full of noise. Janet hadn't just been slipping away. She'd been trying to hold on. Quietly, alone, in ways I hadn't noticed. Maybe because I'd stopped paying attention. Maybe because part of me was afraid to see how far we'd drifted. That night, I told her everything about the keychain, about the visit, about the pit in my stomach that had been growing for weeks. She listened. And then she said the hardest thing I'd ever heard. "I don't know if I'm in love with you anymore," she said, "but I want to be. I want to try." I didn't have an answer. I still don't. All I knew was that something had broken, and maybe, just maybe, we could try to rebuild it. But not from where we were, from someplace honest. Even if it was raw, even if it hurt, even if we failed. The next morning felt different. Not because the air smelled like anything new or because the sun hit the living room at a different angle. Everything still looked the same. Coffee rings on the side table, worn spots in the carpet, her old sweater draped across the back of the recliner. It was different because we'd finally said the words that had been pressing against our throats for months, maybe even years. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of what we weren't saying, but now needed to. And for the first time in a long time, that didn't scare me. I stood in the kitchen pouring coffee while Janet moved around the house slowly, her motions a little more careful, like she was trying not to disturb the thin balance between us. I watched her walk past me toward the hallway, catching the way her hand brushed the doorframe. Just a small touch, barely noticeable, but it felt meaningful, like she was anchoring herself in the space. We had almost forgotten how to share. We didn't talk much that day. There wasn't anything new to say, and yet everything felt new. The silence didn't feel like avoidance anymore. It felt like pause, like both of us were letting each other breathe. A few days later, I found myself on the old bench out behind the garage. It's where I used to smoke, before I quit. The bench was cracked down the middle, but I still sat on it when I needed to think. I had brought out a beer, but I wasn't drinking it, just holding it, letting the cold seep into my hand. She came out a little while later, wrapped in her cardigan, the one I bought her on our 15th anniversary. She sat down beside me without a word. "You remember when we used to come out here just to sit and watch the stars?" I asked after a moment. She smiled faintly. "Yeah, and we used to count planes like they were shooting stars." I nodded. Sometimes I feel like we lost that version of us somewhere. "I think we did," she said quietly. "But I also think maybe we can find a new version. One that doesn't pretend nothing's changed." Her honesty caught me off guard, but I appreciated it. I wasn't interested in pretending either. "Do you still talk to him?" I asked. She didn't look surprised, not anymore. I told him it wasn't right. Even if nothing ever happened, I told him I needed to focus on us. I turned the bottle slowly in my hand. "Do you miss him?" She didn't answer right away. "I miss the way he made me feel, but I don't miss the guilt, and I don't miss hiding things from you." There was something about the way she said it that sounded more truthful than anything she'd said before. And while it didn't take away the hurt, it gave me something to hold on to, something real. We sat there until the sun dipped low enough to turn the sky orange. The kind of orange that makes shadows stretch and the world feel a little softer. Over the next few weeks, we tried to find our rhythm again. Not in big romantic ways, just small ones. She started leaving notes on the counter in the morning. Nothing dramatic, just things like, "Coffee's hot, don't forget your lunch," or "thinking of you." I began fixing the fence she had been asking about for over a year. We ate dinner at the table instead of in front of the TV. Some nights we talked, some we didn't, but we were present. Still, the trust, well, that was another story. It's like a cracked windshield. You can still drive, but you're always aware it might give out on you. I found myself watching her more closely, overanalyzing her smiles, wondering if every phone vibration meant something. I hated that part. I hated feeling like a man I never wanted to be. Suspicious, insecure, scared. And I think she felt it too. Some nights, I'd catch her looking at me with that same old sadness. Like she knew she'd wounded me in a way that didn't bleed, but still left a scar. One Saturday, I was cleaning out the garage, trying to finally get rid of some of the junk we'd collected over the years. I stumbled on a box marked old cards and stuff. Inside were birthday cards, notes, little trinkets, memories of a different time. Near the bottom was a photo of us from our trip to the Smoky Mountains. She was wearing a flannel shirt 2 sizes too big, and I had a goofy grin on my face. We looked free, unburdened. Taped to the back of the photo was a note written in her handwriting. I must have never seen it before. This was one of the best days of my life. Not because of where we were, but because you made me feel safe, like nothing could hurt us. That did something to me. Not like a sudden jolt, more like a slow thaw. I walked back into the house, found her in the bedroom folding laundry again. Always folding laundry. I want us to go away, I said. She looked up. What do you mean? Just us somewhere quiet. Doesn't have to be fancy. Just away from everything. Maybe remember what it's like to be together without all the noise. Her eyes welled up almost instantly. Are you sure? No, I said honestly, but I think it's worth trying. We ended up driving 2 hours north to a small cabin near the lake. No TV, spotty cell service, just us. A deck overlooking the water, and long stretches of quiet that gave us space to talk or not talk. The first night we sat outside in old lawn chairs wrapped in blankets watching the stars. It wasn't the same as when we were younger, but it didn't need to be. I don't expect everything to go back to how it was. She said, I just want us to be honest, even if it's messy. Me too, I said. I don't know if we'll ever be perfect, but I'd rather be broken with you than pretend with anyone else. She reached over and took my hand. That simple, quiet moment meant more than any grand gesture ever could. Back home, nothing was magically fixed. We still had rough days, we still stumbled, but the difference was we were trying actively, not out of obligation, but choice. A few months later, I came home to find a card on the kitchen table, just a plain white envelope with my name. Inside was a note. You're not perfect. Neither am I, but every day I get to choose you again. I will, even on the hard days, especially then. Underneath it was the silver hair tie with the heart charm. She'd wrapped it in a small ribbon. I want to rebuild with you, she said that night. Even if it's slow, I nodded. Slow's fine, as long as we're building something real. That's where we are now. Not a fairy tale, not a mess either. Just two people who've been through the fire and are walking out of it, not untouched, but together.